Thank you, Josephine, for really making the time to do this interview. It's you must be the long sought a person for interview. We have started this conversation a year ago in Addis, telling you that I really wanted to have this conversation with you. You agreed, but somehow there was a new addition to the family. You took a leave, but they always say the right time is when it happens. I'm really, really happy that I have you today. As you know, the Voice of Afsa newsletter, we started it in 2022 just to shed light on some of the members, the leaders that are behind the food sovereignty and agroecology movement in Africa. Afsa is the largest civil society network pushing for food sovereignty and agroecology in Africa. We have 48 members in 50 African countries. I'm not sure if you have seen it. Last time I had a good discussion with the PELUM Association Secretariat, Huntington. So he was the one who inspired me to go deep into PELUM and seek some interviews, some ideas on the country chapters. PELUM Uganda is one of the strong country chapters in Africa. We had a lot to talk about, everything that you do in your own national PELUM association and the kind of activities that you are doing. But basically, I really want to start the question from you, just to know a little bit more about you, the journeys that you have passed, the experiences, the careers, so that, people can understand made you who you are, who is Josephine. Can you please tell us who you are and your upbringing?
Okay. Josephine Akia Luyimbazi is currently the country coordinator for PELUM Uganda, which, like you have said, is one of the 14 country chapters within the PELUM Association. And I've had this role ever since October 2001. But previously still, I worked as the head of programs for PELUM Uganda, a role that I also took on in November 2013. So PELUM is I'm not really new in the organization per se.
Yeah.
But before that, Josephine worked with the National Organic Agriculture Movement of Uganda as the head of policy, advocacy, and strategic working relations department, which was mainly doing a lot of work on advocacy, but also taking lead in the development of the national organic agriculture policy at that time, and working a lot on issues around GMOs, genetically modified organisms, which is also something that is very instrumental or threatens the being of the food sovereignty movement within the African system.
Yeah.
But before that, Josephine also worked with the Council for Economic Empowerment for Women of Africa as a program associate, where I was managing the DFID, which is currently UK8 projects.
Yeah.
And I was managing 3 projects. So CEEWA was a women-led organization, and we're looking at aspects of women in gender in agriculture, gender in economic empowerment, but also gender in decision-making processes.
Yeah.
So that was my very first job when I had come from campus.
Yeah.
In terms of my academic, I started off, I don't remember going to nursery as far as my parents told me. And this was because my father was a head teacher of a primary school in one of Uganda districts called Jinja District. So I was always moving with him because my mother told my elders that as long as the last born clocks 3 years, then I will not have maids at home. So I am the last born at home. So when I
That's
clocked
very
3
wise.
years,
Yeah.
when I clocked 3 years, there was no maid, and my mother was a nurse, so she couldn't take me to hospital. But my father, being a teacher, he would comfortably take me, so I would sit in the primary 1 class. So by the time I was clocking 5, I immediately just joined P1. So I didn't go through nursery. But because I was always in class, when a teacher would annoy me or I'd get bored, I would walk to his office. So most of the times I was just roaming around the school, and everybody knew this was the headmaster's daughter. So I was able to learn
I was trying
English.
to remember those kind of, friends that I have when I grew up. Always have those stories.
Yes,
Those
you should.
children of staff and going around classes, highly privileged.
Exactly. I was one of
Yeah.
those very privileged ones in the staff room. You're the only child there. So that was my childhood. So growing up, I attended primary living education, which is PLE or primary section, in one of the best schools then in Ginger District, which was Victoria Nile Primary School. Then from there, I went to my HSC. I attended one of the prestigious schools in Uganda then. That was Namasagali College. That was headed by Father Grimes. May his soul rest in peace.
Is it in Kampala or
This one is also in eastern
Ginger?
Uganda in a
Yeah.
district called Kamuli. Then from there, I attended my advanced or HSC in Wairaka College. That is where I finished and then went to university. My university, I attended Mbarara University of Science and Technology, where I did a Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies for 3 years. After that, I went and started working in CEEWA, then moved on to NOGAMU. Then while at NOGAMU, because that was now the very first organization where I was interfacing aspects on organic agriculture, aspects on organic trade, looking at aspects of participatory guarantee systems, the certification processes, trying to understand in detail what are the organic principles. And as the advocacy person, I was challenged in one of my meetings by a researcher in the National Agriculture Research Organization, where we were talking about the GMO. And I was saying, no, we do not have to go GMOs, and saying all the narrative around the dangers of GMO. And then he told me, what gives you the mandate to speak about the things? Do you even have a qualification in agriculture? So I went back and I was like, okay, I think I'm speaking with passion. I have the facts, but I think I'm lacking the science in it. So as a result, I enrolled for my Master's of Science in Agroecology.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to share that I am among the very first pioneers of this master's program, which was done by Uganda Matters University. But I also participated in the development of the course content then when I was in NOGAMU, looking at especially how do we integrate aspects of policy, because we know that agroecology stands on 3 strands. So the science, the movement, but also the practice. So when you look at the movement bit of it, it's anchored around the advocacy and social cohesion aspects where we need to collectively advocate for the promotion and adoption of agroecology. So I was lucky that I was among the very first pioneers in this class and graduated. So that has greatly enabled me speak from an informed point of view because I call myself a social scientist as a result.
Yeah.
So after
That's
that,
one of the challenge that we have, Josephine, when especially, people from the science background, they always think that we're just really repeating whatever is on the narrative, talking points and everything. They don't think that agroecology is also a science. It's not something outside of a science or against the science, or it's not as if we are against the science itself. It's just speaking the science. So I'm really surprised that they have this kind of college courses in I'm not even sure if there is a similar one in any other African countries, to be honest. So
what
the
I remember, I think there are some.
there are
Sokoine
some. Okay.
University has a similar program because when we were starting this master's in agroecology, it was the University of Lund in Sweden, and then Sokoine University in Tanzania, and then Uganda Matters University. So those were the 3 pioneer universities that did agroecology. But I know now there are very many more universities that are doing agroecology. And I'm
So the
happy that
program continues.
Yes, it
They are still
continues
doing.
till today.
Okay,
It's still being done in Uganda Matters University, but also they started up a PhD program still on agroecology. And this program is also ongoing with support from the World Bank this time around.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I finished this and I was getting into this role, I did a bit of leadership related courses, project management courses, advocacy, a lot on aspects of gender and safeguarding. And then I was like, okay, now that you have a new role, what else can you do? So I also went into doing my second master's of arts in international development as well. And why I did this is because increasingly, because of my role, I'm in a lot of international spaces. where I need to know how to conduct international business at that level. So I felt this would also add value to my role, but also simplify how I articulate and do most of the campaigns at global level. So in a nutshell, that is Josephine in terms of her academic background and life while growing up. But other than that, Josephine is a mother. I have 5 children, and I'm happy that these babies are growing well by the grace of God. I am happily married to my husband. He's a man. Nowadays, you have to add that as well. Yes. And I'm the last born of a family that was before 7, but we are now 6. I lost my immediate sister in a very fatal accident. That was in 2003. Yes, it really struck me hard because it was my sister and her husband and the baby that I had taken care of. So we had 3. It was quite a tragedy. We had
Was
3
she the immediate
bodies.
elder or?
Yes, she was the one I was following.
Okay.
Yeah, so the others are all still alive.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, but it's only her that passed on.
Yeah.
Yes, so that is Josephine.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I mean, like the last born, usually they say in Ethiopia, they are the most spoiled ones, but you don't seem like a,
No.
a spoiled
Actually,
baby
why I'm
girl.
not spoiled, I think why I'm not spoiled, I also faced a lot of tragedy as I was growing up.
Yeah.
As I was joining HSC, I lost my mom.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So life wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. So 2 years later, I lost my dad. And then 2 months later, I lost my sister. So that life kind of made me grow up very fast and mature, and reality struck hard because at what point in time, I was in a place of, okay, now you are a total orphan and your sister who was going to help you pay for your school fees has passed on. What next? And I thought of very many things. I really thought I had very many ideas. I should go and be a house help. I should try prostitution as I work for fees. I had very many crazy ideas. At that point in life, God did seem to answer any of my prayers. So I was in a place of desperation and a place of what is next? Because when I was growing up, my dad always called me his lawyer. So I had all hopes that I would be a lawyer at one point in time. And before he died, I had actually picked my forms for government for Makerere University applying for law. And then he passes on. So I'm like, okay, now this is too bad. But luckily enough, my second brother is my second elder brother. Tells me, no, Josephine, life will still continue. We may not be able to afford law, but we are going to get a course that will equally be as marketable as law. And I really appreciate my brother. He took me on with his wife and educated me until I finished university. And yes, here I am. So I'm grateful for that support.
Is such a profound story to share. Sometimes these adversities, nobody really wish to be in those places. Those are the places that we dread for. But when it happens, God brings us strength with it. We have a saying in Ethiopia that God will not give you the challenge that you're not ready to face it. And so those are the things that made you who you are. It makes us strong, makes us fight, it makes us never give up. And these are the kind of qualities that build characters, that build who you are as a person and as a leader. I'm really, really thankful that you shared this to me, to be honest with you. It's, what more can you say? These are the things that will make you ready for the whatever positions that you're looking after. And the one thing that's really fascinating to me is your interest to learn. When I had my degree and start working, I thought that was it. I mean, why would I need to, continue learning and learning? Where is that passion came from for you? Why do you still need it? You have a degree, you have a work, you have a career that curves out really pretty well, but you still wanted to improve. You get the challenge from a scientist and you said, okay, so I don't have this and let me go get something. And when you see yourself entering into the international, social movements platform and you said, okay, so that might be something I'm lacking. Let me go get it. So where that passion came from, the passion for educating yourself to progressing and improving yourself?
Thank you, Curabel. While I was talking about my childhood, I forgot to mention that, well, my parents were both informal sector, employed as a nurse and a teacher. They too were farmers. And I remember, well, growing up, I had a very small hoe. I no longer see those hoes. But while growing up, each child had a hoe depending on their abilities. So I had a very small hoe and I loved it very much.
Yeah.
And each time my role was to to plant the beans and to weed in the beans. That's what I think I could do as young as I was. So growing up and knowing that you can plant your own food and eat your own food. Selling was not too much. I think all the food was just for us to consume at
Consumed in
home.
the
I
farm.
think it was the cassava that was for selling. Yes, cassava and maize
Yeah.
were for selling, but also feeding the animals, because I grew up in a homestead where we had some little goats, we had some pigs
Shapes.
as well. And with pigs, they eat everything. So cassava and the maize brand was what we were growing from the garden and giving the pigs. So for me, growing up in that kind of environment, already had be deep rooted within. The passion was already deep rooted from my childhood. So those memories always kept on coming back till today. I still do that even within my very homestead. I have very small kitchen gardens for me. So while growing up in this kind of environment, it reminds you that agriculture is not only a way of life, it's our culture, because then people would sit, you come and eat together and you share your food, where you connect. I don't remember any Christmas where we didn't sit as a family and you'd have everybody coming with their food that they've prepared and you share in this very beautiful African setting. So that is where my passion, my memories still kind of cause a bit of nostalgia in me, that I need to practice that I was taught. So in terms of what exactly inspired me for more engagement, well, I was sharing that I started off with NOGAMU and did a lot in terms of the policy for organic agriculture that was passed in 2019 after so many years, because I joined NOGAMU in 2008. At the same time, I was also campaigning a lot in terms of the GMO. And if you look at aspects around GMO, introducing GMO within us, GMOs in themselves threaten the continuity of our own seed, because some of these GMOs are a terminator gene. So this already made me think, what is going to happen to the seed that we used to share, that I used to see my mother sharing, that I used to see my grandmother harvest, especially maize, and putting it up on the fireplace for it to be preserved. And this is what would get and plant the next season. The GMOs also have aspects around patenting of seed, aspects of seed autonomy amongst the farmers, biodiversity, because if you look at the GMOs that are being introduced, they threaten our biodiversity. So that means that the diversity that we used to have, I already told you, we used to have maize, cassava, I was doing the beans, I remember sweet potatoes on, the piece of land that we had. Now, GMOs go commercial and promote a lot of monocropping. So that means that we wouldn't still have that diversity, but also the traditional knowledge that we had. I remember when my mother I've talked about the saving of the seed, which was entirely traditional, but also in terms of when it would rain, our mother would always tell us, where are the safari ants coming from? What direction are they going? Then that means in so much time, the rains will be coming. So let's prepare the gardens.
It's the same everywhere.
Exactly. So that is no more here. So I felt I needed to see, how do we go back to those basics? How would we ensure that the communities do not lose control of their seeds, but also be tied to corporate interests, especially when it comes to aspects of patent, where you have to get a right to plant the seed, and each season you have to go back and do the same. So I thought I could make a difference. I thought this would be a perfect opportunity for me, because God has placed me in a position where I can speak. I can go to international conferences. I can go to different offices to speak on behalf of those farmers that may not have the opportunity to speak,
to do so.
but also share from a personal experience, because I was raised by farmers. I am a farmer currently. and I know what it means. Curable, I got so disappointed. I think it was in 2017 when I was doing my kitchen gardens, and I go to one place where you find a lot of hybrid seeds on our local markets. It's called the Container Village. And I wanted to plant amaranth. So the packaging was very clear with beautiful amaranth, the pink, the red one. And I planted. I watered, I did and waited. Lo and behold, what grew? There were aubergines. So I thought and I was like, wait a minute. Now, what if it was a farmer who was trying to be commercial and they've planted 1 acre of this seed and they have made projections on amaranth? And then it's aubergines that grow. So I thought, what is not happening to our seed sovereignty as part of the contribution to the overall food sovereignty? So I thought this was an opportunity for me to share even this experience. If it happened to Josephine, who has gone to school and is a little bit exposed, what damage would it do to my grandmother deep down in the village? So we need to put the politics aside and think more of the social movement that is upholding aspects of justice, that is looking at aspects of resilience, but is also looking at aspects of sustainability. So my journey continues to be inspired by the strength of the smallholder farmers who have fed us for generations. Yesterday I was telling people, for me, my heroes, because in Uganda it was Heroes Day. The 9th of June is celebrated as Heroes Day. And I was telling them, for me, I'm celebrating the unsung heroes, the farmers that have continuously fed Uganda. We see trucks coming from the rural side, coming into the city with lots and lots of food. And we know that it's the women who are championing this. So this for me still is one thing that inspires me. So to me, those are my unsung heroes. And that's what inspires me.
I think you find something that really speaks to your heart, It shows when we do something for money, for career, and when it's really our passion, when it speaks to our heart directly, that's where you see all the energy flowing into one direction and one focus. And I'm really happy that you found that space. And I can clearly see the connection of your upbringing, your childhood, especially these days in Africa or anywhere else because of urbanization, the housing. Not so many people are really lucky enough to have that space, small house gardens where they can practice farming. Maybe okay, I can see the connection, but when did you just say this is going to be my life? Is it when you joined the organic movement or Uganda? When does it start as a career?
I think for me, it started when I joined the organic movement.
Yeah.
Back then, I think when I went for the interviews, I just read for the sake of passing the interviews. Because where I was coming from, the organization that I first worked in, we were working in agriculture, but it was generally conventional agriculture. And we were working mainly with women fisher folk. So it was not too much into crop. Because with fish, we know that these are farming communities. You go to the lake, you fish, and that is it. So I think when it really struck me hard was when I joined NOGAMU for the interview. I remember I was seated at the reception area, and there was a big billboard of 10 reasons why you should eat organic. And I had read and prepared for the interview. I knew what organic was, but I had never put thought to it. So the number one reason is if you want to eat safe and healthy, nutritious food that has been grown without any chemicals. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Does it mean I've been eating food with chemicals? So it kind of struck me and I was like, no, you're coming into advocacy and you have to make sure everybody knows about the dangers of eating foods that are not organic. So for me, that was the turning point in starting that. And ever since I joined NOGAMU, till to date, I am very cautious of what I eat. I will always ensure that what I am eating is what I have grown. And because of the kitchen gardens I have at home, the people that I live with, my help is always telling me, Madam, I think the only thing we don't have in our garden is cooking oil because the tomatoes are there, the spring onions are there, the greens are there, the aubergines are there. I have sugar canes, I have rabbits. So it's everything around there. I grow my own chicken. So, and they're always asking me, so what happens? And I'm like, I need to be healthy. I need to see my children grow. And the pain of not growing with my parents to this age and them seeing me celebrate, I'm like, okay, I think I could have made a difference, because my mom fell ill, I think, for 2-3 years. And within the family, we suspect it could have been cancer then, because cancer wasn't known.
Not known.
She had ulcers, and she kept on complaining of the pain, and they would keep on telling us it's a wound, it's a wound. So now we think it should have been cancer, but because cancer wasn't that known then the chances could be likely. So I saw my mother eating multivitamins, eating all kinds of medicine as food, especially multivitamins, nutrients, and all those kind of things. And I keep on telling myself, I cannot do the same mistake. She grew her own food, but not all of it, because we bought tomatoes from the market. We bought onions from the market. We didn't have kitchen gardens because we had a huge garden. So I learned from that, and I'm like, no, I do not want to. I think it's within my power to change this kind of trajectory. And I want my children to also learn the same, because that's where we are going. Unless somebody hasn't had relatives that, or has not been impacted by the increasing toil and health burden as a result of non-communicable diseases, that is the person can comfortably sit and say they do not have passion for agroecology.
No,
But if you've
it
had
makes
that
sense.
pain,
It
then
makes
you
sense.
will have
And
to go through.
and it also makes your advocacy much more stronger, you know, when you find people who walk their talk and teach the same thing to the people. Most of the time, one of our challenges with advocacy is we kind of preach what we don't practice. And it doesn't resonate to the young people. You are telling us to do this, to care about what we eat, but what are you doing to care about the land, the soil? What are your choices that respects the environment, or the soil fertility, or the food, whatever it is that we're preaching? So that makes it really strong that you are really practicing. You know the challenge, you know the benefit from your own experience, from a lived experience that you have. So let's jump into PELUM, because that's why we're here. I'm really happy that we are going to have a conversation between the organic movement, the ecological agriculture, agroecology. We have this way of coming up with names that are at times very confusing, but you have managed to seamlessly reconcile everything and really push for ecological, sustainable way of agriculture and farming practices in Uganda, in Africa, the world too. So when did you start PELUM, and how did you start? And tell us the trajectory of your career growth until you become the country coordinator.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, I joined PELUM in 2013. In November, and that was after working as a head of programs working as a program head of policy, advocacy, and strategic relations in NOGAMU. So for me, God has been gracious, because I've kept on increasing in everything that in my career path. So from head of department, I came and I was the head of programs for PELUM Uganda, a role that I had from 2013 to 2021 October. Then I was able to grow into the role of the country coordinator in October 2021. So whereas I joined PELUM, I found when PELUM was already an established organization that was started in 1995 as a result of farmers that had gathered in a conference to deliberate on different issues within agriculture. And these farmers thought of how can we have a collective voice, but how can we also address the harsh conditions that we are facing as farmers? And then there was also the need to ensure that we are holding our land in stewardship of the next generation, and they thought this could be best done by sustainable land management practices, which they call the ecological land use practices. So as a result of these people that participated in this meeting, each of the participants that was represented was tasked to go back into the independent countries to start a PELUM country chapter. So for Uganda, we had representatives from Environmental Alert, we had a representative from Africa 2000 Network, and another third organization. So these are the people who sat together and started PELUM Uganda in Uganda in 1995 as well. So PELUM was officially launched at regional level in October, and so was Uganda, because it's one of the country chapters that was started right from inception. So this year, PELUM Association will be celebrating 30 years of existence. So will PELUM Uganda celebrate, because we've been there ever since the PELUM Association was established. So that is the history about PELUM.
The oldest PELUM association, in Africa. I'm not sure, which one comes before. I think it's around the same time with PELUM Kenya. So I'm not really sure if they're celebrating 30 years.
PELUM Kenya, PELUM Uganda, PELUM Tanzania.
Zimbabwe.
Yes, Zimbabwe, Zambia. Those are some of the country chapters that started in 1995.
Yeah. It's really crazy to think about it. One thing I really wanted to mention to you, and I honestly have huge respect for PELUM Association, is the institutional memory keeps pushing forward. Before you, the country director, many people that I met was speak to me about Stella, how strong she was. She's an amazing leader and everything. And for me, to be honest, the measure of a great leader is not only what they do during their tenure, whatever accomplishment they have, but how well they mentor, how well they empower the next generation of leadership and pass it gracefully to the next generation, where putting them in a very best platform that they can elevate from. So can you speak to me a little bit about her? Just let's celebrate her, contribution, the effect that she had on you, whatever you picked up from her, some lessons. I'll be really happy to mention her here.
Thank you. Met Stella, I think it was in one of the meetings where I was still working with NOGAMU, and we were starting up a discussion on having a collective civil society organization that speaks for advocacy. And luckily enough, that organization grew. That is the Advocacy Coalition for Sustainable Agriculture. So I was in that space as we're discussing, and that is when I first met Stella. And after that, she interested me in how can NOGAMU join PELUM. So I joined, I made sure I influenced my organization then to join PELUM. So luckily enough, when we came on board, it was, I think, after some months, we had our election. And during the election, members were busy saying, Josephine, stand, Josephine, stand. And I was very young and I had never been on any board. So I didn't know. And immediately I whispered to Stella, do you think I qualify to be on the board? And she was like, yes, why not? And that was the very first time I was seeing another lady encourage another one. So as young as I was like, okay, let me just stand and see how this will go.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I was overwhelmed with votes. I was elected. And so I joined PELUM Uganda on the board.
Before you even joined. Yeah.
So I was there and I was saying, oh my God, I think I am here to learn. And I remember that's what I said, because I was with people who had been on boards before. They were mature in age. I was still a very young girl. And most of the time I was actually very quiet. One person who would be very quiet and try to listen and observe. So in most of the meetings, I would always be listening and trying to learn from the different board members. And that opportunity gave me a little bit more close with Stella. So I remember when the opportunity came up, because by that time, PELUM didn't have a head of programs.
Yeah.
My organization, then I felt I needed to move. So I asked her, Stella, what will be the impact? I'm on the board, but I want to apply for this role. So she tells me, no, I think it's okay and you have what it takes, but that would mean you will have to resign from the board.
From the board, yeah.
So I told her that's okay. Then she also asked me, what do you think will happen? So I told her I will either win or I will lose, and I'm open to anything, because in an interview there's a loser and there's a winner, so I have no issues with it. So I competed, and luckily enough, I got the job. Yeah. So when I got the job, I had now to resign from the board and now become a staff. So I was PELUM Uganda's very first head of programs. Yeah. So this opportunity gave me a very much more close up with Stella. Yeah. From Stella, I learned very many things, because being her deputy, there's a lot that I learned from her that I hadn't learned. One, I learned that when you make a policy as a guiding document, you stick to it. I learned aspects of systems and being compliant with the systems. Stella was a very meticulous person and had a very detailed eye, a very critical eye to detail. That she taught me as well. To form documents and make sure you've understood them, and it's okay for you to get off a document and come back to it with a fresh eye, because to the other person who is reading the document, you're representing yourself in that document. So I learned that from Stella. I also learned to be very composed. Before, I think I was much more vocal than I am, but in some spaces I will be very quiet and then speak later. So I've also learned that, especially when I'm in new places, for you to first understand the terrain and be able to soak in, lean into the process, and then be able to add value to the process. So that I've also learned from Stella. Through Stella, she was able to give me a number of opportunities in leadership, meaning she saw the potential in me even before I had seen it in myself. And she would encourage and give very positive, creative feedback. And constructive feedback at that. So where you have really gotten flowers, she'll give you the flowers. Where you need to have areas of growth, she would still call you and tell you, Josephine, I think you could have done this differently and you can use this. So she gave me that opportunity. Stella gave me the opportunity to participate in donor spaces and engagements, because she would always tell me, Josephine, I'm only managing 2 donors and the rest I use, so handle them. So I think even the very first time after Afsa came to PELUM, the next was like, no, deal with it with Josephine. And, negotiating a contract, negotiating budget amounts, negotiating the direction that you want to go, she gave me that opportunity. Little did I know she was mentoring me into this role. And I remember sometimes she would joke and say, Josephine, I'm leaving soon, so act like I'm not around. And I'd keep on joking and telling her, where are you going? I would tell her, where are you going? You're still too young to go anywhere. And she's like, no, I've been here for so long and I need to go. And I'll tell her, no, I also still need to learn from you. I remember, I think it was 2017. Well, would come in, would always report earlier than the rest of the team, just for us to have catch-ups. And in that meeting, she told me, Josephine, this year I am leaving. So I want you to know I am leaving. And I was like, are you for real? And she was like, yes, this year I am for real. So she would always throw me in the deep waters, negotiate for this contract, into this space. And I'd always tell her, Stella, are you sure you're leaving? Because I do not want to do some of the things. And she would tell me, yes, I'm leaving. Luckily enough, she didn't leave that year because psychologically I wasn't ready. Totally. I wasn't ready in case the opportunity came. And she'd always tell me, you need to prepare yourself to take on this role and do not let somebody else come and take on this role, because you also have the potential to do this role. So if she hadn't spoken to me and given me that confidence to believe in myself that I can do this role as well, then I wouldn't have. Frankly speaking, getting into this role was very hard, replacing a person like Stella with all her good qualities. But I am happy, because each time I would meet her, I would tell her, Stella, you've handed me an organization that has already grown, that I don't even know what I'm going to do. But one thing I assured her
But
is I
you're
would not...
taking it to another level too. That's one of the, the best way that you can thank her or, give her a praise is by how best you perform without her. And you
True.
did
And that's what I told
an
her.
amazing job. Yeah. I mean,
Thank you, Kirabel. And that's exactly what I told her. I can never leave PELUM more in a worse situation than you gave it to me. The best I can do is add, and I will find a way of adding to PELUM for it to be able to grow, so that when I'm also leaving, I'm leaving a PELUM that has grown. So that is one of my inspirations. That is my dream as the current country coordinator, to grow PELUM more than where I got it, because my predecessor did a very tremendous job, a very, very tremendous job. I'm blessed from the feedback that you're giving me that it's growing. So I need to see it even grow much more. So that when I'm also handing it over, it's PELUM is a force to reckon with.
I am really, Josephine, I'm really happy that we mentioned her, because, it's in our culture. We're not used to that much of celebrating people while they are with us. We always wait until they age, do this and do that. I hope this would be something that the next generation will learn from, appreciate from us. That's how we grow institution. No one can start and finish it by himself. Everything is passed down upon. So I'm really happy we mentioned there. So let's talk about a little bit more about PELUM, some of the activities, the program areas that you are working now. What is PELUM Uganda? What are the major activities that you're doing currently?
Okay. PELUM Uganda, we say we are a network of 75 member organizations that are spread in 121 districts in Uganda. Our districts keep growing, and now we are going into a political phase. I'll be lying to you that I know how many they are, but the last I checked, there were over 140 districts. So at least of those, in 121, you'll find PELUM Uganda. So in terms of what we aspire to do as PELUM Uganda, in terms of our vision, we are looking at communities in Uganda sustainably utilizing their natural resources. And this comes from some of the ideas that our great founders thought about PELUM. As a mission, we work to enhance the effectiveness of our member organizations. Because as a network, we empower the member organizations who then work with the smallholder farmers. So once we enhance the effectiveness, then the member organizations empower their affiliate smallholder farmers in the farming communities in practicing agroecology. And we do that through capacity building, through research, through innovation, through networking, through advocacy, and all this we intend to see that it's intended for the equitability and improvement of the livelihoods of the smallholder farmer at the end of the day. So as PELUM currently, we have a strategic plan that is almost past mid-year. We started it in 2002. And it will be ending in 2000. This strategic plan has five strategic areas or domains of change. The first one is agroecology and sustainable natural resource management. This particular area looks at aspects around climate resilience building. It looks at area where we promote the community managed seed security, the community resilience agroecosystem model. This is what we use when it comes to aspects around climate resilience and promotion of agroecological practices among smallholder farmers. Where we promote different practices when it comes to agroecology, where we promote different innovations around climate change, promotion of agroforestry. We look at aspects around soil and plant health and animal health therein. We also have interventions around farmer managed seed systems, where we are addressing aspects of timely access to quality planting material, but also planting material that the farmers are able to contain and control within their midst and do not have to continuously rely on other people for their seed. So here we have interventions that we do. For instance, some years back, we did a seed caravan where we had different member organizations traverse, I think it was the eastern region to the northern region, trying to look at how those communities work when it comes to seed. We have farmer field schools where we have done demonstration on different seeds, especially granules, beans within the community. So we allow the community to select some of the seeds that they want to pilot, and then we work with the farmer field schools. We also do community seed banking, where we have been able to establish community seed banks within the communities for them to be able to access seed, but also grow more seed and also promote seed as a business, where they are able to sell and trade different seed within the communities. Then the last intervention we have in this strategic domain area is promoting indigenous knowledge and local innovation on food and seed within the agriculture sector. So then the promotion of indigenous knowledge and local innovations on seed. And here we look at traditional and indigenous seed. So here we have what we call the Indigenous and Traditional Seed Fair that we hold annually. And this year we shall be having the 15th National Seed and Traditional Food Fair. Then we also do promotion of conservation, but also preservation of this indigenous seed within the communities. The other area of domain of change is agroecology markets and business development. Now, this one is basically inspired by the fact that farmers would always want to practice agriculture when it's adding value to them in terms of income.
Yeah.
So this particular strategic area of change looks at agriculture value chain development, where we have a model that we call the PESA Agro-Enterprise Marketing Model that helps us train the farmers on how to grow their farming as a business,
Yeah.
where we are looking at aspects of agroecology and territorial markets, for instance, where we are looking at linking the farmers to different business service providers. We're looking at aspects of product development, but we are also looking at how they can better structure themselves as a business at that level.
Yeah.
Then we also organize what we call the Agricultural Markets and Systems Expo. We abbreviate it as AMIS. This year we shall be having the fourth, where we bring different business service providers, different value chain actors to discuss. We have business clinics, and these all interface with the different farmers that we have in member organizations. Then we have aspects of improved quality and standards, because we are talking about agroecology, which is safe, healthy, and nutritious for the people to consume. And as a result, we have to look at how are we able to stand in guarantee between the consumers and the farmers that what they are eating is actually safe. So under this particular area, we train the farmers in participatory guarantee systems. We also do support them in establishment of these participatory guarantee groups. We have over 40 PGS groups right now that we are trying to support in terms of certification. We have been able to establish a database of agroecology entrepreneurs as well. And also linking them to different territorial market actors for them to be able to create different business linkages, but also see how they can together work effectively to improve the quality of products, but also traceability of some of these products. We've also been able to do convenings of agroecology actors, especially entrepreneurs, those that are members of PELUM, but also those that are not members of PELUM. So these come together, discuss different issues around their markets, look at different opportunities that they have, but also go ahead to create partnerships amongst themselves as business actors. Then the last one is on agricultural financing. We all know that most of the formal financial sectors shun providing credit facilities or services to agriculturalists. This is because they believe agriculture is very dependent on weather, and with the increasing changes as a result of climate change, then there is no collateral for it. So we have been able to link our farmers with Uganda Insurance Association to see those that are able to insure some of their products. But we are also able to work with different financial service providers, especially financial institutions, on what are some of the friendly packages that they can offer to the farmers in case they want to access financial services. We've also gone ahead to support the farmers to establish through training them through village lendings and savings associations. And we have some that have gone ahead to grow into cooperatives, and they are doing internal lending amongst themselves at very minimal rates, but at friendly terms compared to what it would have been to financial institutions. Then the other program area is policy and engagement, where we are looking at aspects of policy advocacy within the agriculture area, within the agroecology reign. So here we are basically looking at how do we integrate agroecology within different plans, different strategies, different policies at local level, at national level, at regional level, till international level. So we have participated in a number of campaigns. For instance, we always have annually the Land Awareness Week, which is basically looking at aspects of land justice within the farming communities, aspects of access to land, utilization of the land within the farming communities, but also with a very clear bias on women's right to land. We also do have interventions around climate change, where we are looking at climate financing. We are looking at climate alternatives in terms of mitigation and adaptation. We have done and influenced the development of the national positions that have been shared in the Conference of Parties under the UNFCCC processes that we've done under COP in different arenas. We have also engaged on aspects of engagement of the UNCCD, which is looking at desertification, where we are looking at aspects of sustainable land management. We've also worked on interventions around national budgeting or national financing, where we look at the national budget and try to see how much of the budget that the government has allocated speaks to the agriculture sector, and how much of that speaks to agroecology in particular. We no longer have sectors, we have programs. So it's called the Agro-Industrialization Program. So trying to dissect the budget and see how much of it is actually trickling down to agroecology related interventions. We have engaged on campaigns against aflatoxins, where we had Ugandan's products that were banned to be exported to Kenya, especially the maize and the eggs, because of the presence of aflatoxins. So we work closely on this kind of campaigns. Recently, we've just been involved in the World Food Safety Campaign, the Nutrition Week, where we are looking at how do we go back to our food sovereignty, to consuming our indigenous and traditional foods as well. So this is what we do within the policy and advocacy, but we also support the member organizations by creating enabling environment or spaces where they can comfortably engage their policymakers. And over the years, we've had the National Agroecology Actors Symposium, which happens annually. This year we shall be having the 7th as well. And the previous ones have been on policy development of the National Agroecology Strategy. But we've also worked on other policy processes within this very space as well. So these are some of the areas where we do basically trying to look at policy and influencing the integration of agroecology within this. We've also gone ahead to establish what we call model villages or agroecology villages, which are basically demonstration areas where policymakers can be taken to see agroecology physically. We've done campaigns. I forgot, I think, to mention the GMO campaign. Ever since then, GMO is still an issue. It has never ended. And we've done quite a number of policy researches as well, where we believe in evidence-based advocacy and collaborative advocacy, where you give options to policymakers and don't only ridicule them for the gaps that you've identified within different policy processes. But then we have the program quality and delivery. Program quality and delivery basically looks at the enhancement of PELUM Uganda as an organization, but also the capacity of our member organizations. So here we do a lot of knowledge management, aspects of monitoring and evaluation, aspects of enhancing capacity of our members, based on what they request for. So the previous trainings have looked at governance, aspects of taxation and compliancy. We've had use of ICT in monitoring and evaluation. We've done trainings on financial sustainability. So these are on governance and leadership as well. So these are requested by the member organizations depending on what they want. But also within this area, we also are cognizant that PELUM cannot operate as an independent organization. Even when we have member organizations, we need to also be part of another bigger social movement. So we look at establishment of partnerships, but also maintaining those partnerships that we have. So through this process, we've been able to work with civil society budget advocacy group when it comes to aspects of budget advocacy. When it comes to issues of trade, we've worked with CEEWA-Uganda. When it comes to issues of land rights, we have worked closely with the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. We've worked with the Ministry of Agriculture on most of our campaigns, the climate change, the GMO, the National Agroecology Strategy, the Organic Agriculture Policy. So in that policy discourse, we've worked with these ministries. We work with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives when it comes to aspects around marketing. We've also worked with the Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Nutrition, which is looking at the food and nutritional policy, but also the food and nutritional bill. And this is where we've been able to champion different aspects, including My Food is Ugandan, which is a bigger part of My Food is African campaign that is led by Afsa. So we've worked with them and we strive to formalize these relationships. So we have a memorandum of understanding with Ministry of Agriculture. We are pursuing the renewal of a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Lands, and we've started discussions on the establishment of an MOU with the Ministry of Trade. So we also work with the schools and colleges permaculture program, which is looking at integrating and beginning with the youth at a younger age when it comes to aspects of agroecology, We work with the Advocacy Coalition for Sustainable Agriculture, like I had said, when it comes to aspects of advocacy and so on. Then we have the organizational functioning, which basically looks at, it's more inward looking, enhancing the capacity of our staff to effectively implement projects. Yeah. But also the capacity of the member of the management team and then the governance as well. So this is where the governance aspects are anchored. And then it also looks at sustainability of the organization, where we develop resource mobilization strategies and look at financial plans in terms of how do we diversify our budgets? How do we look beyond donor dependency to ensure that PELUM Uganda continues implementing its activities amidst the current changing donor landscape? So those are the main strategic areas of focus within our strategic plan.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much, Josephine. I mean, this is, honestly speaking, it looks like a more systemic, comprehensive way of pushing agroecology in Uganda in terms of different aspects, the policy environment, capacity building. You try to make a business sense, not only practice, agriculture, but how are we going to attract young people to agriculture? How do we make agriculture more sound to them in terms of business? The way you try to build the capacity of your members and everything. It looks a more systemic understanding and a systemic approach to address every issues. But one thing that I really, really admire about PELUM Uganda is how fresh are the name of the programs. It's not the usual cliches that we know in the NGO sector, like awareness creation meeting, awareness sensitization, capacity. There are some activities that are so easy and highly overused and repeated. When I see PELUM Uganda, your creativity, innovation of programs is really amazing. The way you even call not program areas, but domain of change. I found it, very, very insightful. So I really want to mention at least three of them that I found very, very interesting. And maybe if I give you a chance to elaborate, one is I want to speak about AWOLA, the African Women Leaders in Agroecology, mentorship activities that you're doing. I have never seen this kind of program elsewhere. And maybe the Agroecology Week of Action, annual Indigenous Traditional Food and Seed Fair. I really want to know more agroecology strategy that you're pushing on the national level, the advocacy part of it. So where is it now? How are you pushing?
Okay. Thank you so much, Kiribel. The African women leaders in agroecology started as a discussion in 2019, 2018. Back then in Uganda, this was through one of the partners meeting by Tudor Trust grantees, where we had PELUM Uganda, we had PELUM Kenya, we had St. Jude, we had other coaches in the Middle East, and then we had Stella as the country coordinator. We had Mr. Zachary Makanya, who was also the country coordinator for PELUM Kenya then. And in that discussion, the trust was asking them, how can we bring more women on board? Beyond the women in this group, how can we ensure that we have a sustained pool of women leaders within the agroecology space? So this idea started to be in that space, being championed by Makanya and all those different people that were around. And Tudor Trust was kind enough to say, we are willing to support you in case you materialize your idea. So that is how the women, the African women leaders in agroecology came around. Basically to bridge the gap, but to also ensure that there's a sustained pool of women leaders by the older women that we saw that were aging and getting freed at that time. So the whole idea of this AWOLA project, which is currently led by PELUM Kenya, PELUM Uganda only comes through as one of the implementing country chapters. With the Tudor Trust funding, it is PELUM Uganda and PELUM Kenya and PELUM Zimbabwe. But I'm aware that PELUM Kenya has gotten more funding from EU, and they are spreading towards the western side and a bit of the southern area to bring on other chapters as well, but also other partners. because I'm
Excellent.
aware that Malawi has also joined the initiative currently, and Nigeria also has some of the partners there that have also come through. So the movement is growing a little bigger. So within the AWOLA space, we are looking at mentor-mentee, where we identify different women mentors that we link to the mentee to the mentees for a period of 1 year, and they discuss different topical issues based on their areas of growth as mentees, but also clearly linking them to the areas of expertise of the mentor. So these meet on a monthly and have a tool that they use to follow based on their aspirations and the areas of growth, especially for the mentor. For the mentee. So we look at them, we assess them, and after a year, we graduate them, but we maintain them within the pool to make sure that we are taking track, but also following them through on how the program has impacted on them and to see their different capacities. So we have leaders, mentors that have been mentored in leadership, in program management, in advocacy, in product development, in entrepreneurship for agroecology, in human resource, because some of them are already human resource managers or working within the human resource function of the organization, but they do not know some things and they want to come and learn from different people who have done it. So those are the mentorships that we are doing. Some are being linked to academia because they're doing research on their products and trying to see how they can get their products out in the market. For instance, we have a mentee who was doing biofertilizer and biopesticide and needed to work with Uganda Matters University or with professional scientists within agroecology to help them walk through that process as well. So this is what the mentorship program is about, and I am happy that we have generated currently over, because for each cohort we have around 6 to 7 mentees. And this is the third cohort. So for each cohort, you have at least 6 or so coming through. So if you look at the different countries as well within these cohorts, at least we can comfortably report that over 50 people have been mentored within the AWOLA project. And that's only with the Tudor Trust funding. So we are optimistic that with the EU funding, which is a little bigger, we'll be able to reach more young leaders within this area. You also asked about the National Agroecology Strategy. This is a process that we also started in 2019, following the discussion that was held in the International Symposium. I think it was the second symposium on agroecology by FAO. So in that meeting, one of the declarations was for countries to go back and upscale the promotion of agroecology. So PELUM Uganda was part of the participants in that meeting. So we came back, engaged the ministry about the idea, and we were guided to write to the ministry and ask that a department be designated to do this process. So we were lucky that they designated the Department of Crop Resources, where we already have a champion on agroecology, Commissioner Alex Rakuba. And we started on that process. So a consultant was hired, and we did the very first draft of the agroecology strategy. So this has been subjected to national consultations within the different parts of the country. And unlike the policy, which has to go through cabinet, through the development of the RIA is regulatory impact assessment, but also get a certificate of financial compliancy. The strategy is approved by top management. So as we speak, we have a technical committee, but we also have an inner working group, which is chaired by the commissioner, but PELUM Uganda is the lead civil society organization. And we do this with other civil society organizations as well that are passionate and very strong on agroecology, plus academia. So currently, the strategy has been presented to top management on 2 occasions. At the first occasion, we were asked to realign and update our data because the data that we had put was a little old and we needed to update it to the current statistics, which we did. And then the other was answering the question, can agroecology feed the world? And still we needed more evidence for the permanent secretary to be very sure that agroecology can actually feed the world. Then the other comment that also came through is when we were developing the strategy, we only looked at agroecology in terms of crops. We did not broaden it to look at livestock, to look at
Fisheries, livestock,
entomology, the insects. So they told us we have to integrate all those other sectors, which was a very good side because it was a big omission on our side as a technical group. And this has now been done. So we have a very good draft, which is ready for presentation to top management. Unfortunately, top management has not sat for a while, but through the minister, the state minister for agriculture, he was able to present or give a debrief of the national agroecology strategy to the cabinet as providing updates. So we are sure that from this stage, it will go back to the top management and it will be passed because it's fully complete with a strategy, a costed strategy and an A plan. So that is where we are, and we are very optimistic that it will be passed as well.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive, PELUM Uganda, the way you're close with government officials, working with parliamentarians, key decision makers, especially with the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry. I see, a sense of, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you work like in collaboration, not like in many African countries, the relationship between civil society and government is, a little bit tension. There is always back and forth, a fight. They think that they are the enemies, working closely and in collaboration in the sense of working for one major cause is really lacking in different African countries. But I see a way of more cordial relationship with the government, and how do you achieve that, and what would be the best lesson for others that you can share in terms of really achieving in advocacy, policy advocacy areas in nationally?
Thank you so much. I think for PELUM, we learned the hard way. Because there was a time when very many civil society organizations were doing advocacy, but always blaming the government without offering alternatives, which was more of the confrontational way of advocacy. And as long as you do a lot of confrontational advocacy, then the government will automatically shun you out and not involve you in their processes. So we reached a point and we're like, how do we do inward reflection and appreciate the government for what they are doing? Because as civil society, we do not have the mandate to develop policies. Neither do we have the mandate to fund these processes, not until the government gives us that
Yeah.
So, and we should also be cognizant that whatever we do, we are supporting the government interventions, and we don't do this in isolation. So, PELUM, we appreciated that space as an enabler, as a contributor towards the government processes, towards the government plans, and support in implementation of government recommendations that are come through as policies or legal frameworks. So in so doing, we were able to sit with the ministries and tell them, look here, we are not here to fight you, but we are here to give you options where you may be limited, because we know that government also runs on a national budget and at times on donations, and may miss out on reaching some vulnerable groups that are actually affected by some of the issues that they want to change as policymakers. So we came from that space and were able to work with them and tell them, look here, we can be your voices on ground and we can support you implement some of your recommendations as well. And we are willing to also take you to some of the spaces for you to be able to learn and pick ideas and benchmark from different countries, because through our networks, we can talk to some of our partners who have these processes. And I remember, for instance, when we were developing the national we had funding from one of our partners, and the partner was like, they gave us an open check if our members if the members within the ministry wanted to learn from Burkina Faso about how they do the agroecology policies. And we had the same, the Kenyan team came here as well to learn how Uganda is doing this. And we have members from the commissioner and some of the staff within the ministry have been supported to participate in national events for them to be able to debunk and remove that wrong narrative on agroecology. Because by default, most of the governments are promoting conventional agriculture. So I don't blame them when most of their thinking, most of their recommendations come with a conventional lens. And not until they're in these spaces, then we gradually change their attitude. So we have been able to work with them. We've supported the minister to participate in BioFAC in Germany. BioFAC is one of the biggest organic agriculture trade fair where they're talking about issues on standards, issues on participatory guarantee system, where here he was able to interface and see that actually what the farmers are growing is actually exported and is contributing to the national growth, domestic product of the country. It's generating revenue and is employing a number of people. We were able to take the minister still in the East African Agroecology Conference. He participated in the first and recently he was able to participate in the second. So this kind of exposures, this kind of platforms help change their attitudes and make them more of our champions. And it was after the minister participating in the conference that he came back and said, no, I need to brief the president. I need to brief cabinet about agroecology because it seems they do not know. So you're having somebody speaking passionately for what you do because he considers you as an ally and not as an opponent. So we've been able to consider government as our allies where we sit together. We have memorandums of understanding that clearly articulate the things we're supposed to work on. And we've provided information with them. We share our annual budgets. We share our work plans. We share our reports, clearly highlighting what we have been able to work with them. And also that linkage with some of their mandates. For instance, we have the agricultural sector strategy. So clearly showing how is PELUM's work helping them contribute to that. In the areas of research, we've also worked with government on some of these areas because we know government has the mandate to conduct massive research, which we may not be able to do because we do not have the facilities. We may stop at participatory action research at farmer level, but they can do much more than that. They can do action-led research. So we need government in one way or another. We need to be in bed with them for us to have a very good marriage and be able to push for a collective agenda. No one is fighting another, but rather each one is complementing another.
It's a great lesson, to be honest. And the one thing that I really appreciate about Uganda from far is even the President Museveni. He is considered as one of the champions for African indigenous healthy and nutritious food. He has expressed his suspicions about GMOs, and that is a huge help coming from the top of the government leaders, and it has a way of influencing other government officials too. But I agree with you, our formal education, the information, the narrative is most of the time we're more exposed to the industrial agriculture narrative, which is creating a huge problem. So while we are on this topic, can you give us some words why you think agroecology is a way forward for Ugandan food systems transformation? Why is it important? Why is it critical? And why do you think that Africa should transition toward this agroecology?
If you look at what we are currently grappling with as Africans, as a country, Uganda, but also as the globe, aspects on climate change, aspects on decreasing biodiversity, aspects on decreasing soil and plant health. If you look at the current incidences that are bringing a lot of health issues in terms of the rise of non-communicable diseases, the cancers are so prevalent right now, aspects of diabetes, people getting clots, very many health complications, hypertension. Stroke is becoming so rampant with something that we grew up knowing is for, people who have really advanced in age.
Exactly.
You will find even a youth that is really coming into interface with some of these issues. So in terms of why should we really prioritize agroecology? Agroecology in its totality, looking at its certain principles, offers a huge, enormous variety and benefits, including addressing some of the issues that we're grappling with. If you look at some of the principles within agroecology, for instance, biodiversity, which we are using to address the challenges and undo most of the things that the monocropping has resulted to. Biodiversity is a very strong pillar within agroecology. When we're looking at improved soil health and plant and animal health, agroecology is looking looking at using readily available materials, promotion of biorationals and biofertilizer, which is not going to affect the microorganisms within the soil that improve the perforation of the soil and the filtration of the soil when it comes to these areas. Agroecology is one that is talking about this. When we are looking at the use of the biofertilizers, we are increasingly reducing on the social and environmental impacts of synthetic chemicals in terms of contamination. Recently, I was participating in the World Safety Day, and I was very taken aback by the figures in terms of the contamination that is resulting from the use of synthetic chemicals, from the use of aflatoxins, and how we had members that were representing Uganda Cancer Institute that were telling us, for instance, aflatoxins and the use of, in Uganda, they use a lot of mancozeb as a preservative, especially in vegetables, tomatoes to be precise, is closely being linked to cancer and also closely being linked to reduced infertility, to infertility in women, but also low sperm count amongst. These are not things that you will be privy to if you're using readily available biorationals and biofertilizers. So it's high time that we adopt agroecology and see how this can be done. If you're looking at increased resilience to climate change and pest incidences, it's only agroecology that can address those, because within agroecology, we have that symbiotic relationship between the different ecosystems. We are looking at how do we enhance aspects of agroforestry? How do we adopt sustainable farming systems? For instance, crop rotation, mulching, use of contours, rainwater harvesting. All these are promoted within agroecology. So agroecology is one that promotes and ultimately leads to sustainable food production systems that are more resilient, more nutritious, but also, if you look at the strongest point for me, is bringing in the aspect of culturally appropriate, because within agroecology, aspects of culture are strongly enshrined. So
that's the most missed point.
Exactly. So for me, this is where I feel agroecology is really vital.
Now, thank you so much. It really, while you were speaking, I was thinking how agroecology is really addressing different aspects of, farming and food systems. The question always remains: how can we, feed or produce our food in a way we're not destroying our biodiversity or our environment? So, what's your message or advice for a young African generation to embrace this agroecology movement, to show them that there is a way other than the industrial way of agriculture, promotion of these monocultures or the influx of this big food culture in Africa from the West, the KFCs, the McDonald's, everything is coming now. There is a huge push to change our food systems, the way we consume, we produce our food. So what would be the main thing that you would advise them to resist this push toward this industrial agriculture in Africa and look for the solutions nationally, internally, embrace their culture and their food and their food system in the national context?
Okay. I believe these are really critical times that most African continents, and I believe the world globally, even our friends from the Western world, are facing. So if you look at all the world or the world in totality, we are grappling with very competing narratives when it comes to aspects on feeding the world. What kind of food are we feeding the world with? But also adapting to climate change, because climate change affects all of us, irrespective of who you are. We are all impacted grossly by climate change. And then the issue on restoration of biodiversity. Within the youth, we have our hope. If you look at most of the African countries, I think majority of us have youth as the major population. For Uganda, looking at the recent census that we had, the youth are almost 60% of the Ugandan population. And so is the same thing with Kenya. You saw how they came up in flames. The Gen Zs took all over and, took the country by storm. This was just a demonstration that the youth have a lot of innate power invested within them. We need to see, how do we empower the youth with adequate information, for them to be able to change the narrative that is around. When you talked about eating modern food, especially fast foods, it's not that the youth desire to have this, but it's the society that we are in. The narrative clearly says if you do not eat that kind of fast food, then you're not modern enough.
Yeah.
You're not styled up enough. You're not taken to be of a certain social class. So the youth would always want to be associated with that social kind of class. And the youth that I've interacted with in terms of how can we change, I remember we still are implementing the Youth in Agroecology Learning and Business Track Africa, which is abbreviated as YALTA. This project was started initially to see how do we interest the youth into agriculture. We have a lot of unemployment in Uganda, for instance, and so are other countries, meaning the youth are shunning agriculture as a form of employment and looking at different ways. And when we're talking to the youth and trying to understand what exactly is making you run away from agroecology. And one of the things they said is, Josephine, you're not making agroecology as sexy as we want it to be. And
It's
what
not
did they
fancy
need?
enough for them.
It's not fancy enough.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
we integrate ICT, for instance, within agroecology? Because any youth would want to market online. They'd want to have a TikTok account and show their products. They'd want to, use technology. They'd want to use tools that are making things very much advanced and, increasing their production and productivity at the end of the day. They would want to add value, and they're mostly interested at the marketing chain and a little bit not so interested in the production chain. And this is because of the profitability along the value chains of different products. So we need to see, how do we change the narrative? How do we entice them to love agroecology for them to be able to take it at the forefront? And this is what I have to say to my youth, to the dear youth in Uganda and beyond. A lot of hope is invested in you, and we have all the information, we have all the tools to equip you to take us back to the glory that has been totally distorted as a result of the very misleading narrative, as a result of the growing industrialization quest by some of our leaders. And yet we need to go back to the agriculture that still promotes our heritage, agriculture that promotes biodiversity, agriculture that promotes system interaction and puts us in a place where we can comfortably say this is a sustainable food production system. The time is now, our dear youth.
Wow. I'm really blown away, to be honest. I mean, this is the most profound, moving, very touchy message for African youth. It speaks directly to my heart. I'm really happy that you gave us your words, and I'm sure it would inspire many youth as it does to me. And maybe it might be the right time to ask you, what would be your, I'm not asking you about the legacy where you are still young and pushing, but at least if you can, what would be your vision? What do you want to see in the near future in Uganda, in PELUM, in Uganda, in Africa? Can you tell us at least, if these 3, 4, 5 things happen, I'll be the happiest, the most content and fulfilled person? What would make you to feel that way?
I would have fulfillment if everybody, regardless of status, everybody deserves the right to access safe, nutritious, healthy, grown food with dignity and without corporate control. Each one of us, regardless of who you are, we eat. So for me, if God can just help me continue my work so that I leave a legacy, or I am remembered for Josephine that did as much as possible without any discrimination and fought for equitable access to safe, nutritious, healthy food that dignifies us as individuals in our independent cultural identities that we have, I would be very happy.
I'm sure that day would come in Africa where we will all really start seeing the adverse impacts of industrial agriculture. The West is seeing it. The danger is really, everything is really collapsing before their eyes, and it's up to us to really show our young generation to be able to direct them to look what has happened elsewhere so that they can respect and celebrate what they have and defend, resist against anything that's pushing the most destructive agricultural systems in Africa. I'm really happy. I know it's very, very late in Uganda now. It's around 11 a.m. here, close to noon. anyway, so I must have kept you really, really long. So I am
No, it's okay.
extremely humbled and grateful that you take time, all this time to really speak to me and to our audiences. I'm sure given time we could have covered a lot of questions, but at least it will give us a glimpse of who Josephine is, what PELUM Uganda is doing, and the impact it's having nationally, regionally, in Africa level, and globally. So I'm so happy that you gave us your unreserved time. Thank you so much, Josephine.
Thank you too for pursuing me. It's
I
been long coming. We've kept
Yeah,
on rescheduling and redoing. So today I told myself it has to end.
to
In
happen. Yeah,
our local language, we say chigwa lero. It has to be done today.
done today.
So today I
Yeah,
was very determined that we conclude this so that Curable can have his long-awaited story.
yeah,
And I'm happy to have been given this opportunity. I know there are very many leaders out there that you would have chosen from, but choosing to listen to Josephine in terms of her perspectives, but also share about PELUM Uganda's perspectives is truly humbling. And I really hope I've poured out my heart. I've really poured out my heart. And I just
you
hope
did.
my message will touch one or two people. But
Yeah,
especially, I'll be greatly humbled if we have two youth that have listened to this and make a transformation, make the right choices, because all our hopes are in the youth. We say
yeah,
we are holding this environment in stewardship of the next generation. And
yeah,
for me, that is where I'm coming from. Josephine
yeah,
Incurable will be no more, but our children, our great great grandchildren will be there. What is it that you'd want to hand them over? So
yeah.
I'll be very happy if my great great grandchildren come and find an environment where there are birds singing, there are bees flowing, and they're able to know that this is how food is grown, and they're able to go to the tree and pick a mango and eat it without any form of
Any form.
hesitation.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that is the place where I want not to tell them, look here, first wash this plant before,
yeah.
before
It's
you eat this
chemical,
apple.
it will.
First, exactly,
Yeah,
it has a lot of chemicals. First do this. So I want to go back to that space where you'd sit in the garden and you're breathing fresh air and
yeah,
not air full of contamination and congestion. And yeah, so I aspire to see that one day.
yeah. Continue inspiring us. We'll leave them, our readers, with a PELUM Uganda website, all the information that they have, all the social media handles, so that they can start following you, learn from you, get inspired, get into action, participate, engage, transform in all the activities that you are working on.